Welcome to Building Brawl. This is a wildcard guide to help you smartly build a great collection for Arena Singleton and build a good card collection for Eternal Singleton down the road or Eternal Brawl whenever it becomes available on Arena. Basically, if you have a few extra wildcards laying around and you don't know what to spend them on, watch this video and just, take a couple notes and write down a couple cards you might like and spend them on these cards. So, this is a guide to building a really good foundation for the future of Arena. Now, let's start off with the win conditions. We have mono blue spells that we're talking about today. And let's start off with some of the win conditions for building a blue deck. So, Nexus of Fate and Karn's Temporal Sundering. These are your exact win conditions for any sort of blue-based deck that you're going to be building on Arena. I did do a blue creature deck. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of really good blue creatures. But where blue makes up for its lack of really good creatures, there's some really good spells. So we have Nexus of Fate. Take an extra turn after this one, then shuffle it into your library. That's pretty much what you want to do late game. You want to ramp, get to 7, 8, 9 mana. Once you go for a Nexus of Fate, you get to take an extra turn. You've got some Planeswalker activations to go for. It's going to put you in a really good position to get some really nice card advantage and also go for those Planeswalkers. Even if you're only running one copy of Nexus of Fate, the fact that you're going to be able to shuffle it back in and use it to your advantage, that's really going to help you kind of push the advantage bar towards you in any sort of your matchups. And also, Karn's Temporal Sundering, being able to, once again, take an extra turn. That's exactly what blue wants to do. This also has a really nice tempo effect. You get to take an extra turn, then return up to one target non-land permanent they control back to their hand. So really, it's a really big setback. So you get an extra turn, you send back their Planeswalker, they just spend another turn getting a Planeswalker out. So it's kind of like you're taking like a turn and a half almost in a way, or you need to take 2 turns in a row, because depending on what you send back, they have to redeploy it back onto the battlefield. So that's definitely what blue wants to do, is kind of have some sort of tempo play, sending something back and taking an extra turn. And, you can always burn an extra turn card even if you can't take full advantage of it. But if you have something to do, if that can push you into a Planeswalker Ultimate, that's when you really want to use that extra turn, because that's going to allow you to hopefully close the game out. Now, outside of kind of winning with blue spells, one of the things that blue is definitely known for is going to be card advantage. And some of the best in Arena is going to be Search for Azcanta and Chemist's Insight. With Search for Azcanta, we're going to be able to look at the top card of our library during our upkeep. If we like it, we can put it on top. If not, we put it into our graveyard. Then once we get enough stuff into the graveyard, we get it to flip. It's going to turn into the 3-mana activation of us kind of digging for another card. This is everything that you want to be doing in some sort of blue-based control deck. You get this down on turn 2, you get to filter every one of your card draws. Once it finally does flip, you kind of ramp in a mono blue deck or a blue control deck, which is, you normally don't get to do. Then you can use that as a way to tap and kind of dig a little bit deeper into your library. Chemist's Insight, this is a wonderful card for control. You get to draw 2 cards, so you can sit back on your counter spell. And then once you cast it, late game, you can jump start and discard something and recast it back out of the graveyard. It is a little pricey at 4 mana, but we are playing Arena and we are playing Singleton. It's a little bit more of a slowed down format, so this is definitely one of your premier draw spells. So if you're going to pick up 2 cards, Nexus of Fate and the Karn's cards, those are definitely really good effects. But if you're only going to pick up 2 cards, Search for Azcanta and Chemist's Insight are going to be blue staples going into the future for a very long time. Now, moving on to some more card advantage spells, we have Chart of Course. This is one of those spells that, oh, do I need to run this to take advantage of attacking with a creature? You don't. 2 mana, draw 2 cards is a wonderful effect. You do have to discard a card if you don't attack with a creature, but for the most part, you just want to dig deeper into your library to find that answer. You can get rid of something. As long as you're digging deeper into your library in a blue deck, you're doing something good. Same thing with Radical Idea. It is a 2 mana, 1 instant speed draw card. The fact that it's kind of like the, I'm forgetting the, I could see it now, but it has the flashback of drawing a card. This is basically the same effect, just being able to late game have something in the graveyard where you can draw an additional card really quick. It's always nice to kind of build that into your deck. It's not the best card draw out there, but you don't want to not run it because it can definitely help you out in a pinch. Now, another thing that you want to run is some sort of instant speed card advantage. So we have Opt, you're going to be able to get the Scribe and then be able to draw a card. Anticipate's going to be one of our better kind of cantrips for the format. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 in your hand, the rest go onto the bottom. Like I mentioned earlier, these are great spells to leave up a counter spell so your opponent doesn't deploy anything out for the turn, or you don't want to use your counter spell. Use Opt or Anticipate at the end of your opponent's turn. Get a little bit of card advantage, then you're set up to go for your turn. Wonderful cards. These are definitely 2 cards you definitely want to pick up if you have some of the common wild cards and you're not sure what to spend it on. Now, some more of the sorcery speed card advantage. We have Secrets of the Golden City. Draw 2 cards. Then we have the City's Blessing. We draw 3 cards. We are playing a Singleton format, so getting the City's Blessing is really not that crazy. It's not that far-fetched. So that way, even if you draw it late game, you can get 2 card draw. Or if you draw it, if you draw it early game, you can draw 2 cards. If you draw it late game and you have the City's Blessing, being able to draw 3 cards for 3 mana is always a nice thing. And of course, classic divination, 3 mana, draw 2 cards. Nothing really to highlight on that. It's just drawing some cards. Exactly what blue wants to do. Now, one of the things that we do have on Arena is a little bit more kind of some situational card draw. We have Sift, draw 3 cards and then discard a card. You want to get us access to as many cards as possible. So if we're going for something like Sift, you do have to discard a card, but you want to see as many cards as possible when you're playing Control, and this is definitely going to help you dig a lot deeper into your library. And then one with Machine, draw cards equal to the highest converted mana cost of an artifact that you control. You're playing Control, you're playing Singleton, you're probably going to be running something like Gilded Lotus in there, or even something like Chromatic Lantern. So even if it's simply just a 4 mana, draw 3 cards, that's still worth it. And let's say that you do have Gilded Lotus on the battlefield, and you go for one Machine, that's going to be 5 cards for 4 mana. That's exactly what you want to do. Plus, Tezzeret. If you're building a Tezzeret deck, throw this bad boy in there. Get down Meteor Golem, go for 1 with a Machine. That's tool time grunt right there. Now, one of the things that blue is also really known for is going for board control, being able to kind of control the board. The #1 card, the Cyclonic Rift of Arena, is going to be River's Rebuke. And plus, the animation is really cool. But return all non-land permanents target player controls to their owner's hand. This is one of those spells that really helps you. Let's say you finally built up a really nice board state. You go for River's Rebuke, send everything back. You can use it to win the game, or you can use it to simply just kind of buy you some time. Let's say your opponent's been really aggressive and you're going to be dead in a turn or two. You rip into River's Rebuke, send everything back to their hand. They have to reset. It also allows you to kind of set up some counter spells. So let's say that your opponent got an early Planeswalker. You can use River's Rebuke to send everything back, and you've got it set up now to where you can counter that Planeswalker. So you can actually use River's Rebuke as either a way to kind of stabilize. You can use it to win the game. You can also use it to kind of set up some sort of tempo play to where you can counter something once they go to recast that spell that you sent back to their hand. Same thing for Sleep. Tap all creatures target player controls. They don't untap during their next untap step. This is a great way to, it's kind of like a little mini River's Rebuke. This is going to clear the way for you to swing at your opponent's Planeswalkers or simply just swing in for lethal combat damage. Either way, you want to definitely pick up River's Rebuke, but Sleep is a really good addition to pick up because it's going to allow you to do all sorts of things to control that board state. We also have Blink of an Eye and Expel from Orza. These cards are stuff that we can use at instant speed. Really, these are kind of more of a tempo style play. So you have Blink of an Eye. It does have the kicker too. You can return target non-land permanent. If it's kicked, you get to draw a card. So you're looking at 4 mana, send something back and draw a card, which is always good. And then Expel. If we have the City's Blessing, we get to put that permanent on top of their library and set. So basically, whenever you return a permanent to their hand, that's going to make them recast that again next turn. With Expel, by them putting it on top of their library, you're setting them back a card draw. They're going to end up with the exact same thing that they already had on the battlefield. So it's kind of like card advantage in a way. It's not technically card advantage, but being able to put something back on top of their library, that's going to set them back a turn from drawing something they really need. And especially if you put something that's just like a mana dork they're not really wanting to cast. It's a great way to kind of control their draw step simply for only 2 mana. Now, you did have the City's Blessing going, but playing Singleton gets on there pretty quick. Once again, keeping on with the kind of bounce thing, we have Unexplained Disappearance. Bounce a creature, we get Surveil 1. It's always nice to have something that tags along. And same thing with Voyage. Return target non-land permanent you don't control. If it was 2 or less, you get to scry 2. So just having some sort of extra value tacked onto these tempo plays is a great way to really kind of set you up for later turns when you're bouncing stuff back to your opponent's hand. Now, one thing that you definitely want to do in blue is have some sort of board control. Temporal Machines, return target creature, and then if you control an artifact, draw a card. That's going to allow you to bounce it back and get some card advantage. Same thing with Time of Ice. Tap target creature opponent controls. It doesn't untap during its untap step. And then for 3, return all tap creatures to their owner's hands. So this is another way to make sure you really kind of control the board in a little bit more of a spot kind of hand-selected way, where you're tapping down certain creatures and tapping down their big threats, and that's going to allow you to maybe swing in with some of your flyers, attack their planeswalkers. You want to be able to just kind of slowly pick apart their board instead of sending everything back to their hand all at once, because just leaving it tapped down is another way of kind of sending it back or going for something like River's Rebuke. Now, blue is wonderful at counter spells, and there's actually some pretty good counter spells given the current kind of meta game that is Magic Arena. So we have Wizard's Retort. This is going to be one of your premier counter spells, a 3-mana counter target spell. Then if you have a wizard on the battlefield, it basically just turns into counter spell, where it's counter target spell. So you are playing blue, more than likely you'll have at least some sort of wizard in the deck. Most of the time it'll probably be a 3-mana counter spell, but if you have a wizard on the battlefield, it's always nice to have access to a counter spell. And then Sinister Sabotage. This is kind of the maybe the remand. I don't want to call it remand because it's not the same effect, but it's a really nice counter spell, counter target spell, and then you get to surveil for 1. So you just get a little bit of card advantage on top of countering something. Every time I have Sinister Sabotage in my hand, it always feels good. I really enjoy seeing that. There's also Essence Scatter, which is going to be, it's been around forever, counter target non-creature spell, and the Disdainful Stroke. This is going to be wonderful to really catch your opponent's planeswalkers, a lot of their big creatures. Counter target spell will converting mana cost 4 or greater. Pick both of these up. These are going to be staples for Singleton very long into the future. You know, these are some of the basic core building blocks of Magic. These are definitely a lot of the counter spells that you definitely want to pick up. Same thing with Negate, counter target non-creature spell. Now we do have Unwind, which is actually a really unique counter spell. Counter target non-creature spell, untap up to 3 target lands. So this is kind of a way you can still kind of keep up other counter spells. If it does get countered, you miss that untap step, but it's always nice to have something that is basically, essentially, it amounts to a free spell. So you can go for Unwind, untap those 3 lands, and go for one of your card draw sources. Put yourself in a really nice position. We also have Syncopate, which is going to be kind of one of your X counter spells, and then Spell Pierce, because it's always nice to catch somebody off guard with the Spell Pierce, or at the very least, running Spell Pierce, you can catch that, use it to catch some of your opponent's early mana rocks, and that'll be a good way to kind of catch them off guard. And most of the time, people aren't going to be playing around a Spell Pierce, so you can definitely catch some people snoozing on that. Always feels pretty good. Now, some of our bigger payoff spells, we have Spell Swindle, counter target spell, create X colorless artifact creature tokens, where X is that, not creature tokens, treasure tokens. So basically, let's say that we counter a 5 converted mana cost spell. We're going to put 5 tokens on the battlefield. That's going to give us access to 5 mana. If we have a big X spell to draw some cards, we can counter spell, use those tokens to draw some cards. It's pretty much open on Spell Swindle. This is the not necessarily the Force of Will, but this is one of your more high-impact counter spells for the format. It is really expensive at 5 mana, but the effect that it does generate, it just, oh man, it feels... Turning a Planeswalker into artifact treasure tokens just feels so good. And then, of course, we have Cancel, which is going to be just your standard 3-mana counter spell. Nothing too crazy on that one. Now, one of the things that blue is also really good at is kind of interacting with the graveyard in a spell-based manner. There's not a ton of spells out there, but there's some really good spells at our disposal. We have Mission Briefing, which is basically the kind of Snapcaster version of an instant spell. We get to surveil 2. We can dump those cards in the graveyard. Then we get to choose an instant or sorcery in our graveyard, and we get to cast this turn, and then it's going to get exiled. So basically, this is going to be perfect to run in any of your control decks. You can use it as in a pinch. Let's say that you're kind of against the wall. You can use Mission Briefing as a way to kind of dig for some sort of answer, even if you can't cast something out of the graveyard, or the game is drug on and you can use Mission Briefing to recast River's Rebuke out of the graveyard. Basically just turns your graveyard into a second hand and allows you to dig a little bit of card advantage by digging a little bit deeper into your library. So solid card. Highly recommend picking up Mission Briefing. You will not be disappointed with that one. Also, same thing with Flood of Recollection. This is one of those, if you're building a little bit more of kind of like a blue-white control deck, you would definitely run this in there. You're not going to want to run this in every single blue deck that you're building, but it's a really good effect. Return target instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand, then exile it. So, like I mentioned, being able to return River's Rebuke, something like that's always really nice to have access to that. Now, some of the really good utility spells for blue, that's going to be Entrancing Melody. Love this card. X double blue. Gain control of target creature with converted mana cost X. A lot of the time, you're going to get this down for, 3, 4, 5 mana. You're going to gain control of a creature. There's no really requirements to it. You just gain control of it. It's yours now. So that's a wonderful way to get your opponent to spend some more of their spot removal. You get their creature, and let's say it's late game. You top deck it. Your opponent has their finisher on the table. Even it's like something like 6 or 7 mana. You go for Entrancing Melody, gain control of it. You got your own finisher now, and they'll be like, "Wow, nice play." No, they won't. Quasi-duplicate. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. This is a great spell. You can use it in numerous ways. You can use it to abuse enter the battlefield effects. You can generate something like Tempest, the one that taps down all of your opponent's creatures. You can get some really good card draw going with this. You can simply just make another flyer to help you close the game out. And the fact that it does have Jumpstart out of the graveyard, that's going to allow you to get another copy of that creature on the battlefield. Definitely what you want to be running in some sort of Singleton format where you're trying to squeeze as much value out of every single card that you're running in your deck. Now, on to some of the other utility cards. We do have Drowned Secrets. It's a little bit more of a situational spell depending on what build you have. Whenever you cast a blue spell, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. Now, if you're building a mill deck, this is perfect. As the card pool increases on Arena, this will slowly become a better way to self-mill your graveyard, because it says whenever you cast a blue spell, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into the graveyard. So if you're running some sort of Mass Reanimator deck, you cast a blue spell, you can target yourself with the spell and dump cards into your graveyard if you want that to happen. It's just, just want people to know that with the wording, you can also target yourself if you need to mill yourself. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think there's too much that you can really use to take advantage of self-milling yourself at this point right now. But as more cards get added, it'll definitely get a little bit stronger having some sort of access to that. And there's also a precognition field. You may look at the top card of your library, cast it if it's an instant or sorcery, then for a 3 mana, exile the top card of your library. Definitely what you want to be running in a Singleton format, especially if you're a control deck. Get this down for 4 mana. You can look at the top. Basically kind of turns your hand into an extra card. So if it's a counter spell, you can cast it, or a sorcery card draw. Then if you don't really like what's on top, it's a great way to sink some of your mana to exile some of those cards. And, maybe you can exile your entire library if you generate a ton of mana in the future. But either way, it's nice to have access to the extra card on top of your library and a little bit of card filtering as you exile that card. And then last but not least, we have Conjecture. This is going to be a 5 mana way for us to return a spell back to our hand, return a sorcery back to our hand, and then whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, we get to copy that spell. Kind of depends on what deck you're running in here. If you're definitely building some sort of really heavy blue-white or Esper control deck, this is probably pretty much what you want to be doing at 5 mana. Get this down, return the instant, return the sorcery, and then copy spells on the back end. And also, keeping on theme with that entrancing melody, in Bolus's Clutches, enchant permanent. So that's going to be your opponent's lands, it's going to be your opponent's artifacts, creatures, planeswalkers, whatever's a permanent. So you can use this to enchant permanent, then it becomes legendary. This is a great way to, let's say that your opponent does get down a planeswalker and they're slowly working towards that ultimate. Maybe you have a counter spell, but you want to save that counter spell for something else. So you can wait till they get to that ultimate, go for Bolus's Clutches, gain control of their planeswalker, go for that ultimate, and be like, hey, there you go, ultimate is your planeswalker for you. And your opponent will be like, oh, that was so nice, thank you very much. But I mean, that's going to be very situational that happens, but it is possible. It's a fun way to kind of play Magic, is let your opponent kind of tick up some planeswalkers, then use something like Clutches to gain control of it and take advantage of that ultimate. But that's going to be it for the video. There's a lot of really good blue spells in here. Like I mentioned, picking up even half these cards, you're going to have a great foundation for blue decks going into the future. But that's going to wrap it up. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.